it's been the most amazing career. I wonder, just again, when you're talking about the ABBA side of things, was there a period when you kind of fell out of love with the band? At 78, ABBA's Benny Andersson finally confirms what we thought all along. The glittering stage, the alluring costumes, and the image of two perfect couples. That's what people say about ABBA, yet behind that beautiful curtain lie stories that have never been brought to light. Recently, in an interview, Benny Andersson broke his silence with heartbreaking behind-the-scenes revelations, painful breakups, escaping from the world life in exile, and an unending battle with the ghosts within himself, and most shockingly, he revealed the truth that left fans stunned. The real reason ABBA broke up was nothing like what the press had ever written. Before becoming the soul of ABBA, Benny Andersson was just a Swedish boy obsessed with music. During winter gatherings, Benny would often sit by an old accordion listening to its notes blend in with the church choir. Once, when he was only 10, his mother told him, "Benny, you can't play the piano all day. You need to go outside and run around with the other kids." The boy just looked up and smiled. "I can run with my hands on the keys." Those simple sounds became his guiding star later in life. When ABBA was born, Benny held on to those pure musical values instead of chasing trends. ABBA reached many peaks with fervent passion. He and Björn Ulvaeus were the perfect duo. Benny built each chord, and Björn breathed life into them with stories and emotional lyrics. Benny was obsessed with perfection in every note, so much so that Björn once exclaimed, "Benny, it's already brilliant. What more do you want?" But Benny didn't stop, spending months exploring new and exciting writing directions. And what was the result of Benny's efforts? Agatha and Frida shone brighter and brighter, while Benny sank deeper into the shadows. The media rarely remembered him, and he had no choice but to accept it. Sadly, although he was not the most visible member, he was the invisible thread connecting the four of them. Whenever conflicts flared, he was the only one who could resolve and ease the tension. But this role, as keeper of the flame, drained Benny every day. After each group dispute, he felt his energy depleting. That silent sacrifice kept building up, leading to the inevitable. Benny lost his creative spark. The band broke apart, and he was forced to painfully let everything go. For decades, the public believed ABBA was the perfect band. But recently, Benny unexpectedly revealed a raw truth behind the artistic lyrics were personal wounds, jealousy, and long nights wrestling to keep the band from falling apart. It took him decades to open up and tell these stories. Heartbreak was the source of timeless songs. The relationship between Benny Andersson and Frida didn't begin with a romantic spark. They came together during long nights in the studio long past midnight. They began dating around 1969 before ABBA officially formed. Both had been married and had children from previous relationships, but few knew this love was just as turbulent. When recalling that time, Benny grew nostalgic. In the narrow room, Frida stood behind the glass headphones covering her ears, singing with passion. Benny hunched over the piano, his fingers searching for each chord in rhythm with his beating heart. "You know, I feel like this song is telling our story," Frida said, her eyes shimmering with sincerity. Frida brought a blazing heart into the studio, while Benny buried his emotions deep within the keys. This difference created beautiful melodies, but also sowed the seeds of tragedy. They fused intensely in music, but lost each other in love. While Frida grew up with the pain of abandonment, haunted by a fear of being forgotten. Benny, on the other hand, learned to crush his own weakness and hide his cracks. With such personal wounds, they couldn't give each other a whole love. Music became their only bridge, the only language they dared to use to connect and confide. They wrote heartbreaking ballads and searing lyrics as a form of conversation without words. Yet music, no matter how intense, was only a temporary remedy. When the last note faded, the room fell into a terrifying silence, forcing them to face a hollow emptiness and a gnawing ache in their hearts. "Could you just talk to me instead of hiding in the music?" Frida asked one late night. Benny stayed silent for a long while before speaking in a low voice as if trying to suppress something. "Because music is the only place I feel safe." Later, Benny admitted to the press he found it easier to pour all his feelings into the mixing desk than to face the eyes of the one he loved. He poured pain and longing into every chord and lyric, then slammed the door of his soul shut the moment the song ended. But what Frida needed was not a man who existed only in the music. It was a hand, a breath beside her when the studio lights went out, and Benny was never that man. "I think I used music as a shield," Benny said in a later interview, "but a shield can't hold anyone close." Their love shattered beyond repair. What once connected them most deeply, music, was also what drove them apart. Years later, Benny confessed that songs like The Winner Takes It All or One of Us were not simply breakup ballads. They were musical walls where he hid from life's struggles. In music, Benny could control every high note, every rhythm, but feelings out there in the real world were too chaotic, too risky. Frida didn't hide like that. Every word she sang carried the full weight of her emotion. She faced her feelings with honesty. The world thought their breakup was because Benny cheated, but the truth was Benny had pushed her into darkness through his long silence. He could write melodies that moved millions, but never dared to say, "I'm afraid of losing you." I saved all of the best words for the songs instead of giving them to the person who deserved them. Benny later admitted, his voice choking. And that fear helped him create masterpieces, but it also broke the heart of the woman he loved. At 78, Benny finally realized the most beautiful notes could never fill the void of silence. He understood that love had slowly died in muteness, and the deepest wounds don't come from words, but from the things never spoken. But before losing everything, he had to fight his most brutal internal battle, a battle no one in the world knew about. Benny once had to fight the ghosts in his own mind. If you notice in every photo of ABBA, the stage lights always shine on Agnetha and Frida, the radiant smiles, the glittering outfits, and the scandals big enough to feed the entire press industry. Dabin, Nenny, Andersson. The media simply described him as the man hidden behind the keyboard with a rigid face lost in concentration. Fans endlessly debated who sang better, who shone brighter, who was the real soul of ABBA. But there was a far fiercer battle going on that no one could see. One late night in 1978, inside a Stockholm studio, Frida walked in after finishing a recording. Benny was still there, his fingers tirelessly sketching out new chords. "This one will be a hit," Frida said. Benny looked up, a trace of melancholy in his eyes. "I'm not thinking about hits. I'm wondering if anyone will notice the complex chord layering in the chorus." Frida laughed, thinking he was joking. But Benny had never been more serious. Benny was wrestling with a secret yearning. He just wanted his talent to be recognized by the world. Yet, ironically, all the attention was on the two female voices. The world didn't see the man who stayed up all night weaving layers of harmony. When awards were handed out, and ABBA's photos flooded magazine covers, his name was always just a small line, quickly passed over Benny Andersson keyboard. That was his tragedy. Many mistakenly thought Benny Andersson was jealous of Agnetha or Frida's spotlight, but the truth was far from it. What he hated wasn't them, but the way the media distorted ABBA's story. Even though he was the architect behind the group's entire sound, Benny was painted as a lifeless machine forever stuck behind a keyboard. The resentment grew so strong that one time, after reading a review calling ABBA easy, forgettable pop, Benny slammed the magazine down on the table. "Easy. They don't know how hard I fought to make a song sound easy," he once shouted in the studio. The more famous the band became, the lonelier Benny felt. The public remembered only the two leading female voices, completely forgetting the composer behind them. Benny realized he was trapped in a hopeless battle against a system that judged music by image and marketability. Years later, in an interview, he finally opened his heart. "I don't need people to chant my name. I just want them to know those melodies didn't just appear. They cost time, sacrifice, and sometimes even pieces of myself." Benny's greatest tragedy wasn't with Agnetha or Frida. It was with a world that forgot him. He had built a musical empire, but in the end could only stand on the sidelines and watch. But glory doesn't last forever. Small cracks began to show. The fading light, the brag of a legendary band. In 1917, ABBA's stage still blazed bright. Thousands of fans cheered every lyric of Dancing Queen, echoing across the stadium. But when the applause faded, Benny Andersson quietly sat by the piano, his fingers dropping a few chords, his face blank, as if his soul had drifted away. Frida walked in, holding a glass of champagne. She tilted her head, half smiling, half worried. "Why are you hiding here? We just had a glorious night." Benny didn't look up, something painful weighing inside him. He muttered bitterly, "I know, but Frida, it's not the same anymore." ABBA was at the height of fame, but for Benny, the music had lost its meaning. He no longer felt a shark when composing something new.